Minister, give us a sense of what went wrong with negotiations with the U.S.
Well, first of all, Hasrina, nice to meet you as well. It's been a long while. Regarding our discussion with the US, that continues. I don't think there's anything that went wrong. We have got an extension of time to 1st of August. That will continue. In fact, as you mentioned, the Prime Minister is meeting Mark Rubio. I'll be there as well. And tonight I'll be on video call with the US Trade Representative, Ambassador Jamieson Greer. So the negotiations and discussions continue. Of course, timeline-wise, it's been shifted to 1st of August.
The thing is, the optics earlier were pretty positive. The Prime Minister talked about how negotiations and talks were excellent, and you yourself gave a pretty positive feedback on the back of those talks with the U.S. I'm just wondering, what is it that the U.S. is demanding from Malaysia that Malaysia could be resisting?
It's about time. We need more time because we need to engage our stakeholders, the various industries, the agencies, the various ministries. I'm still optimistic that given the timeline, the revised timeline, we can come to a conclusion in our negotiations. It's not been easy because some of the issues need to discuss in greater detail. That's why we needed more time. So to me, I'm still optimistic that we can come to a conclusion.
What are some of these issues, Minister, if you could share with us? Has it got to do with semiconductors, for instance, exports to China?
Not really. Semiconductors have been okay. Export to China concern will be on the chips, but I think that's also been addressed. It's more on agriculture. I think this is an area where we need to look at the different standards in agriculture and in terms of halal recognition, in terms of our digital economy. So those are issues which obviously is not related to tariff, right? On tariff, I think we are nearly there. Issues on what we can do with regards to reducing and lowering tariff. Our tariff to US is already very low. The applied tariff on average is around 5.6%. So that's why I'm optimistic. But having said that, it is still subject to agreement with the US. This is still negotiations still ongoing. And today, having a call with the USTR to continue our negotiations.
Back in May, you talked about taking the tariff rate to zero. Are you still looking to do that? How optimistic are you that that may still be on the table?
To zero is on sectoral. I'm still optimistic. But again, right now, the discussion is more on the average tariff. Looks like the floor is going to be 10%. So I think we have to be realistic in our targets for the base for tariff at 10%. But on sectoral, I think that's something that we can discuss. Today, if you look at the announcement made by Trump, semiconductors, pharmaceutical, for example, are still exempted from the 10% tariff. So we are hoping that through these negotiations, we can continue to extend the 0% tariff on some of the key exports to the US, especially semiconductor.
Talk to us about how challenging it is to negotiate with the US. I mean, people have suggested that they are shifting goalposts. First, it is about addressing the deficit, then it's about security concerns, then it is about China. How's that complicated talks with the US?
Well, Haslinda, I must admit, it has been challenging, but all the discussion has been done in a very respectful manner. For me, the negotiations have been with Department of Commerce and also USTR. Of course, I had several meetings with Secretary Ludwig as well. We do talk about issues on economic security, apart from non-tariff barriers and tariff barriers. There are issues that sometimes requires a bit more attention. So therefore, we will look at that. Areas in digital economy, for example, and on economic security, I think we've been always talking about the security of the chips that are being exported to Malaysia. So we are looking at ways to have stronger enforcement through stronger laws regarding the importation of chips that are restricted to Malaysia. So these are issues which I think will be discussed with the Prime Minister today, and definitely will be discussed during my discussions with both Secretary of Commerce and USTR.
In your conversation with Jamieson Greer, expected later today, what will be your key message? How do you think you can persuade him to actually see Malaysia's point of view?
Yes, well, one, of course, to focus on the trade imbalance, that's one issue, right? Like I said, tariff, non-tariff, economic insecurity, the one is on the trade imbalance. We do have a positive trade surplus with the US. Based on US numbers, it's about 25 billion US dollars in 2024. So one is to look at areas where we can reduce that trade imbalance through procurement of Boeing, for example. I mentioned that in my statement earlier in media yesterday, and also looking at areas where Malaysia can increase investments in the United States. And at the same time, on economic security, I think there are ways to look at strengthening our laws to enforce restrictions on certain items. And finally, I think what's important as well is mutual recognition on many of the various standards, especially on agriculture.
Right. Trump has suggested that he may want to impose an additional 10% tariff on BRICS because of their anti-American policies. Might that be something you talk to Jamieson Greer about later today, given that Malaysia is a partner looking to be a member of BRICS?
Well, I can't preempt what he will ask, but definitely if asked, I will say that.
But what's your message on BRICS?
My message on BRICS, again, BRICS to us, of course, we are, like you said, we are a partner of BRICS. We are not members of BRICS, but having said that, we are applying to be a member of BRICS. So if asked, I will definitely say that BRICS continues to be an important platform for Malaysia, just like EU is, just like GCC is, just like CPTPP is. We have signatory to 18 FTAs and various economic blocs. So that will continue. It's about trade facilitation, about sustainable development. It's not about ideologies, right? So it is about improving trade and investment with other nations as well.
Prime Minister Anwar on a tour to Europe, also in conversations with BRICS. Do you think that would help buffer the impact from these tariffs, or do you expect that to make it worse, given the perception of BRICS when it comes to the US and President Trump?
Well, to be fair, we as a nation, we need to ensure that we continue supporting the principle of multilateralism. And as such, we need to definitely engage all countries. We continue to believe in a rule-based multilateral order with WTO at its core. So for me and for Malaysia, it is important that we continue to engage all countries, including the US.
And Malaysia, of course, the chair of ASEAN this year, pushing for, more trade within the region, pushing for policies to be coordinated. Some say perhaps that could be seen as anti-American, and that is something that the Trump administration is taking action on. Is there risk of that happening to ASEAN member nations?
Well, for ASEAN, again, we are always a proponent of multilateralism, and we are definitely believe in ASEAN centrality and ASEAN neutrality. So again, ASEAN member countries are all engaging the US. In fact, we came out with a joint statement to continue to engage the US, and we are all in agreement that we should not take retaliatory measures against the US.
Is ASEAN any closer to a regional response to the US and US tariffs?
Well, the ASEAN foreign ministers are meeting as we speak. So I believe the ASEAN foreign ministers are looking at coming up with a consensus. But on ASEAN economic ministers, we have already came up with a response in May, and that response still stands, where we will continue to engage the US, and we want to ensure that ASEAN as a bloc continues to have good collaboration when it comes to trade and investment with all countries, including the US.
Minister, Malaysia potentially looking at multiple tariffs. How might this impact the economy? Can you quantify the impact?
Well, Central Bank is still doing the analysis. Based on consensus, the numbers could be between 50 to 100 basis points for the year 2025. Of course, that is dependent on whether it is 25% for all companies or for all sectors and industries. Right now, there is exception given to certain industries like pharmaceuticals, like semiconductor, like strategic minerals. So those are areas where, those are assumptions that have been made. So yes, the answer is based on consensus, based on market reports, that is where we are. But it's not going to be, Malaysia is not going to go into a recession in that case. Our forecast still around 4.5 to 5.5% in terms of GDP growth.
So as it stands now, the 4.5 to 5.5% GDP target is still intact?
Officially, it's still intact, but we will have to wait until the end of July, or in this case, 1st of August, so that the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance can come up with a revised GDP forecast for 2025 and, of course, for 2026 as well.
What measures might you adopt to mitigate the risks to that projection?
Well, apart from diversifying our markets, increasing our ability to penetrate new markets, we also want to look at the current markets that we are in to increase the access to those markets that we are already in. But we also helping our exporters. Just recently, the Prime Minister announced more support for our exporters in terms of export promotions. And at the same time, at the end of the day, Haslinda, we as Malaysians, we need to make sure that our companies can remain competitive, especially in sectors that we have competitive advantage on. So at the end of the day, the fundamentals are important.
How is that competitiveness being impacted by a dollar that is expected to weaken from here?
Well, again, when you look at dollar versus ringgit and dollar versus the rest of the world, dollar has weakened. But for Malaysia, if you look at the long-term trajectory in terms of growth, the competitiveness of Malaysian companies is going to be a critical ingredient towards the success of the Malaysian economy. We need to focus on increasing the complexity of our economy. We need to focus on ensuring that our export continues to be competitive. And in this current, multipolar world, we need to ensure as well that we continue to engage all markets, all countries, all economic blocs.